Good morning. So, a few weeks make quite a difference, huh? Our events team was a little caught off guard because we were planning for a wake. And Martin Gillespie suggested that it would be an Irish wake, which would be a little bit more fun. But we're delighted at what's just happened, and we're delighted at what you just did. And we're going to do this a couple of times over the course of the next few days. But it's really important right now, you as our executive committee members, our Legacy Society members, right now to reflect on what just happened and what you just did, what you just made possible. So I'd ask all of you to look around at the person next to you, give them a big pat on the back, and applaud yourselves for helping to save the country. You know, nobody thought that this would happen, or very few people thought that this would happen. Somebody just said, "I did." Well, but many folks with heritage, particularly our members, thought that it was a possibility. And what you told us to do, and what you've told us to do over the long haul, was keep fighting. You said we've got 17 candidates out there in the Republican field. Go talk to all of them. We listened to you, and we did that. And we took probably significant gambles, just like we're taking back in the early 1980s with the first mandate for leadership. And we did that on behalf of you. And we're delighted to be here in this incredible opportunity that you, our members, have given the country and have given heritage. Last night, a couple of us were over at the National Archives for a very special dinner. And there, in the midst of all the founding documents, the Declaration and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, there are a number of other important documents and letters there. One of them that I was struck with and thought this actually was very apropos for our times and for our heritage family here, and particularly for this morning's lecture. And it was from George Washington. It was written in May 18th, 1776. He wrote it to his friend John Jay. And in it, he talks about the real concern he's got and the despair he had about America's prospects. Think about 1786 and reflect on what time that was. We're in the midst of the Articles of Confederation there. They're sort of falling apart as they were writing. The real irony of this, though, was that this was almost a year to the day before the Constitutional Convention began. That was May 25th, 1787. And Washington writes this to Jay, and I think it's just an important thing to start on and to reflect on as members. I think of our situation, and I view it with great concern. From the high ground on which we have stood, from the plain path with which invited our footsteps, to be so fallen, so lost, is really mortifying. By virtue, I fear, has a great degree taken its departure from our land, and the want of disposition to do justice is the source of national embarrassments. For under whatever guise or colorings are given to them, this, I apprehend, is the origin of the evils we now feel and possibly shall labor for some time yet. So think about where we've been in this country over the course of the last several decades, particularly the last 8 years, and think about how things would have been different had we had a different turnout on November the 8th there. But we do have, thanks to you, this incredible opportunity. And we'll see over the course of the next several days here lots more opportunities and we're asking you to really take a look at this. What Heritage is doing right now in the transition, the Trump transition. What Heritage and you will do together in 2017 to make sure these policies get implemented and enacted on. And we're asking your participation in this, your involvement in it, and your input. And we'll be rolling out a number of new initiatives, which I think you'll be delighted to hear about and really want to get your feedback on. Now I want to introduce a member of the Heritage family of longstanding, a good friend who you've seen on this stage before. You've probably met Rod and his wife Betsy. The last several years they've become increasingly involved with Heritage and Heritage Action, and last year they joined our Reclaim America campaign leadership team. He's a former vice president with Bell South, and he's a natural leader, I'm sure, which you'll see more about later today and today during his introduction. I'd ask Rod Odom to join me and introduce our keynote speaker.
Well, thank you, John, and it's a delight to be here today. I was really honored when I got the call about introducing our next speaker because I'm a huge admirer of our next speaker. I was going through in some detail, comments and accomplishments with my wife, Betsy, and only as a wife can do, she cautioned me that I might want to be brief so that our speaker could have a couple of minutes at the end of the program to address the group. So I will do that, but the accomplishments are so many. Our friends across the aisle have done a magnificent job over the last many years in rewriting history and creating a narrative that somehow conservatives are always the villain. And that story has sold pretty well for a long time. But it seems in 2016 that the American people have begun to question that narrative, and I think the outcome of the election is a clear indication of that. We had an interesting opportunity with our speaker, and he's been a major player in changing this narrative with all of his work, his books as well as his movies. And in 2012, he came out with the blockbuster 2016 Obama's America, which I really believe provided some great insight into the ideology of our president. In 2014, he created what I thought was a great documentary, America Imagining a World Without Her, which really exposed how the liberals have rewritten history and what America really stands for. And then finally, in 2016, he released Hillary's America, The Secret History of the Democratic Party. I think in addition to the books, these movies had a huge impact on delivering facts to many, many Americans, and I think had a material impact on the election. In addition to these incredible films, he's written 19 books. He's been very busy since 1984. He's a world-class scholar, political commentator, and a great friend to the Heritage Foundation. And I would just like to add, I think he is a man of enormous courage, and we thank you for what you've done for the conservative movement. But before Dinesh joins or comes on stage, I'm going to leave. Let's take a minute, and if you would, turn your eyes to the screen, and let's look at a slice of some of his incredible work. Thank you.
The Democrats are the party of economic opportunity, social justice, and racial equality. That's their pitch. But is it true? Who are these Democrats?
It really goes back to this idea of social engineering and social control. In America, we called it progressivism. Soviet Union, they called it communism.
The whole purpose of the Democratic Party was to reestablish white supremacy.
The Democrats support slavery, while we Republicans oppose slavery.
To the Democratic Party.
This Civil Rights Act will allow colored men to sit at the same table beside the white guests.
The racism continued well into the 20th century.
We gotta give them a little something, but not enough to make a difference.
Sometimes the violence intensified, other times the racism merely changed forms. Almost everything they did had a racist motive.
While Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, the Clintons took hundreds of millions of dollars from foreign entities.
She looked very menacing. I was really frightened.
I didn't see any reason to keep them. The fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. What difference at this point does it make?
Imagine how much worse things could get if these 2 depraved crooks returned to the White House.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm honored and delighted to be here. Wow. What a feeling and what a great event. I was 17 years old when I first saw America. I had come to this country as an exchange student. I saw New York City through the window of the airplane. I saw the Statue of Liberty, the skyline of New York. And I knew instantly and intuitively that if I stayed in America, my life would be completely different from that moment on. I felt I was moving from the margin of the world to the center. And I realized that in America, I would have the opportunity to be the architect of my own destiny, to write the script of my own life. And this is the great promise of America. This is the American dream. And I've seen it realized in my own life. One of my first jobs, in fact, my first job coming to Washington was at the Heritage Foundation. Adam Meyerson, who was then the editor of Policy Review, hired me as the managing editor. And then that propelled me to the Reagan White House and to a career as a writer and speaker and now movie maker. I'm thrilled to be here with my wife, Debbie. She's an immigrant from Venezuela. And both of us come from countries that are, I would say, run by gangs. And people go into politics to make money. And politics is rife with corruption, embedded corruption. I should say that my view of the American dream has not been unshaken. A few years ago, I stood in a New York courtroom and heard a bailiff bark out the phrase, United States of America versus Dinesh D'Souza. And I got to tell you, as an immigrant, that when you feel the full force of the government, batteries of FBI agents unleashed against you, you feel that tremendous sense of vulnerability that shakes your patriotism. And I mention all this because it seems to me that this sort of dual sense of exhilaration and anxiety that I've experienced in my own life over the past 20 or 30 years represents in a sort of embryo what we as conservatives have been going through. The exhilaration of the Reagan Revolution, the collapse of the Soviet Union, spectacular changes in the world, and then the emergence of a new class of Democrats. If you look at Obama, if you look at Hillary, they're very different than the old breed of Democrats, very different than Dukakis or Jimmy Carter, certainly more Truman or JFK. The old Democrats, essentially, we faulted with incompetence. I think if the Heritage Foundation were to award a prize for presidential nincompoopery, I think Jimmy Carter is still the title holder. But Obama was a different matter. Obama set out to remake America. He set out to undo the Reagan Revolution, and he did. and he did. I think we all realize how closely this country avoided a massive debacle. We dodged not a bullet, we dodged a missile. And we dodged it. I mean, I'm very happy to award congratulations around the room, but we dodged it despite us, not because of us. Many of us were on the sidelines. Many of us did not predict this, we didn't expect it, and some of us worked against it. We could have lost this election, and had we lost it, some of us would be to blame for that. It's worth remembering. The philosopher Hegel once said that the owl of Minerva flies by night, by which he means that you can only understand things, huge things that happen in retrospect, in the rearview mirror, so to speak. Now, if I were to step back and look at American politics, we didn't deserve this moment, but we have been gifted it. How did this happen, actually? The remarkable thing about this is that Trump figured out something that we have been trying unsuccessfully to do for 30 years, which is he figured out how to win the votes of white working-class Democrats. Republicans have been trying to get these people since Reagan. Reagan got some of them. But the reason that we didn't succeed is that the Republican strategy was essentially to appeal to the social issues and count on white working-class Democrats to let their social values override their economic anxieties. And this strategy basically never worked. Trump figured out that the way to get these guys is to appeal to them both on economic and social issues. And in a sense, what Trump realized is that there have been three powerful forces in this economy that have had a very transforming and to some people decimating effect on the white working class. And those forces are technology, globalization, and immigration. Any one of these would have a powerful effect, but all three together moving in the same direction. Now, as we know, defenders of capitalism, students of Milton Friedman, champions of free trade, all these things are in some sense very good from an economic point of view, but that doesn't mean that they are very good for everyone. And it doesn't mean that they are very good together at the same time. So the Democrats, by the way, have never had any intention of doing anything about any of these three things. They had no intention of restricting immigration. In fact, they wanted to increase it for political reasons. And globalization. So what the Democrats were doing now for 8 years is using a form of scapegoating and trying to convince the white working class, in effect, hey, listen, the reason you're losing your job is because CEOs are flying around in private jets. So in other words, ignore the actual causes of economic transformation and invent scapegoats. What Trump realized politically was that he would address directly two of the three factors, immigration and trade, and attack them frontally. This is the reason that Trump caused a schism in the Republican Party. Because, as I say, most of us, free traders, champions of capitalism, students of Adam Smith and Milton Friedman, were like, tariffs, what? What are you talking about? Now, what's going to happen in the future remains a little unclear, but I do want to make one point that is worth, I think, considering, and that is that we don't live in a free trade world. We live in a world where other guys are very happy to stick tariffs on our products. Now, the typical kind of econometric answer to that is, let them. That's their problem. If they want to put tariffs, we shouldn't put tariffs as well. That's the economic argument, valid unto itself. But there is a political argument that basically says that the only way to get another guy to take his tariffs down is to threaten to put some up yourself. Now, this is something that we as conservatives don't think this way. And this has actually politically cost us very dearly. And it's true not just in the issue of tariffs, it's true across the board. Because if what Trump is saying is that I want free trade, but I want to be able to say to the Japanese, if you're going to put tariffs on American cars, guess what? We're going to have some on your cars until you take yours down. During the Civil War, when Abraham Lincoln learned that it had become a policy of the Confederacy to shoot every captured free black who was fighting on the northern side, Lincoln issued an executive order that for every black man shot by the Confederates, remember the white soldiers captured were just put in camps, one Confederate soldier would be executed. On the face of it, this is barbaric, it is unjust, but it is nevertheless the only way to get the Confederacy to stop doing what it was doing, which it did. As I suggested, this is not just true in politics. Let's look at the Supreme Court. Why do we have the mess that we have now? Most of the people on the court are Republicans. Our guys nominated them. Reagan did. Bush did. But the truth of it is that we nominate people who come to the court to perform an intellectual feast. I'm actually quoting Robert Bork. The Democrats send people to the court to fight with a knife. For this reason, they can count with Euclidean certainty on their votes. We can't count on our own guys. Oh, let's see, let's cross our fingers and hope that we get Kennedy. Oh, we got Kennedy, whoops, we lost Roberts. This has been our predicament now for 20 years. And it's true across the board in politics. The Democrats have been using the weapons of government against their enemies. Not just me. The Tea Party, they've been using it against Petraeus, a whole bunch of guys. How do we stop them? The only way we stop them, I'm sorry to tell you, is using the weapons of government against them. How else are they going to learn that the FBI, the IRS, and the instruments of government are not to be used, not to be deployed against your political enemies? How do we teach them that lesson? If we play fair and they play unfair, what is going to be the long-term outcome? We need to build a majority party. How do we do that? Now, John Fogerty mentioned briefly this whole business about the Democratic narrative. And I want to say a word about that because the Democrats have won politically over the past 30 years, not because their takers outnumber the makers. We tend to divide America, the makers and the takers, and we think, oh, you know, once we reach the tipping point where the takers are more in number, we've lost the country. But that's not how the Democrats have won. The reason that they've won is that they have been able to convince a lot of people, and pretty much all young people, that they are the good guys, that they have the moral right to rule, and that all the good things that have happened in American history are due to them. They have been the party of the outsider, of the immigrant, of the little guy, the party of Latinos, of women, of blacks. This is their history, and this is what they're up to now. This is why they claim to be progressive. They're the party of the future. We're the bad guys. We're the party of the past. We're always trying to roll back the clock. And they haven't given this up. They're still doing it, and they're going to keep doing it. We can't say we won because the truth of it is they still control all the major megaphones of our culture, except for Trump's 10 million tweeting followers. They still have the media, they still have academia, they still have Hollywood. If you've set foot on a campus these days, you'll realize that the problem is much worse than it has been for 30 years. My daughter is at an Ivy League college. The atmosphere after Trump won was unbearable. There was a witch hunt to find out who were the people who were even sympathetic to Trump and completely and permanently discredit them and stop getting people to talk to them. Now, how has the left achieved this? They've done it not because young people consider conservatism and reject it. Most young people don't know what it is. Most young people, if you were to say, what's a conservative? What is it that we are trying to conserve? Most young people would not know. And this is also, again, partly our fault because our leaders don't tell them. We don't have a way, we don't have a mechanism to reach these people. Our megaphones don't reach there. Now, we send speakers to campus, but they're hit and run. I go speak on Tuesday, I leave on Wednesday. The fat and happy liberal professors live there every day, and nothing can shake them. They don't care about state legislatures, which are hands-off. They don't care about parents. They don't care about the alumni. Most of all, they don't care about the administration, because the administration doesn't control them either. So, the point I want to make is I want to suggest that as we think forward, we have been granted, almost by providential grace, a window of opportunity. Obama had a window in the very beginning of his first term. He had the House, he had the Senate, and he used it. He actually rammed Obamacare through by the narrowest of margins and saddled us with it. So what are we going to do with our window of opportunity? Most of us conservatives in politics, when we win, we kind of go back to ordinary life. We heave a sigh and we return to our ordinary life. But we don't know if our window will be as narrow as Obama's was. And the work that we have to do is enormous, because the left still controls the three biggest amplifying megaphones of our society. They transmit information, and so we're always at a political disadvantage. Now, in this last election, it almost became comical. I mean, I think for me, the most indelible image of the campaign is not even Hillary. It's the media. It's just this image of these reporters, you know, huffing and puffing to drag that crooked hag across the finish line. And now, I want to look ahead for a moment. Seems to me that what Trump represents is not the remaking of American conservatism. He represents the remaking of the Republican Party, the remaking of the GOP. And the truth of it is, the GOP created Trump. The establishment made Trump. Why? Because the ordinary Republican sat back and said, look, number one, the last time around, we nominated the most squeaky clean guy in America, Romney. Romney was so squeaky clean, it was actually kind of unnerving. But nevertheless, in a short time, they were able to make even Romney, Mr. Nice Guy, into Lucifer. So the ordinary Republican said, if Republicans are so cowardly and weak that they can't defend themselves, even with, one may say, Jesus Christ as their nominee, then we actually need a tough guy. We don't care if he's got some skeletons in his closet, as long as he knows how to handle those skeletons, as long as he knows how to throw a punch. The Clintons are gangsters. We need a bit of a gangster on our side. That's the first reason we got Trump. The second reason we got Trump is the sense that the Republicans have been in power. Republicans have had the most important wing of the government, which is the House and the Senate. And what was the result? Apparently nothing. Why not? Why not? The reason, I believe, has to do with the terrifying power of the press, of the media. When we think about Republican leaders, they are privately terrified of the media, because they know that the media has the power to humiliate, to ridicule, to destroy your life, and to destroy your life to such a degree that once they're done with you, your own side will bury you. Boehner knows that. McConnell knows that. Our guys all know that. And they respond with the appropriate fear, timidity, avoidance of controversy, going into the familiar fetal position that we all recognize as a Republican political trait. And Trump won because he refused to play by these rules. And he is the only guy that refused to play by the rules. And I think, again, in retrospect, look, I'm not a Trumpster, as they say. My wife and I, Debbie, we were married a few months ago. We were married by Rafael Cruz, Ted's dad. It'll give you a feeling of where our loyalties were. But the truth of it is, in retrospect, using Hegel's in the rearview mirror, I don't believe that any of those other Republicans on the podium could have won this election. No way. So let's learn from this as conservatives. Let's recognize that the Republican Party does need to be remade. Let's not be too dogmatic about the way in which this new conservatism shapes itself. I'm an aficionado, an acolyte of Reagan. I cut my teeth in the Reagan years. But Reaganism was a response to the challenges of the 1970s. Stagflation, a Soviet bear on the prowl. We've been running on warmed-over Reaganism for 30 years with very mixed results. There's nothing wrong with a political strategy that tries to figure out how to expand our base and make our majority, our electoral majority, into a numerical majority and into a permanent majority. This is, I think, the promise of Trump. Will he do it? I don't know. But I know that we have, as conservatives, also a long-term task, and that is also to start building some rival megaphones in academia, in Hollywood, in the media. This is why I've changed my whole career. I'm a think tank guy. The reason I started making movies is to reach more people. I got the idea from Michael Moore. I remember he made Fahrenheit 9/11. I'm like, if that guy can do it, how hard can it be? And in all honesty, you know, I mean, I've surpassed Michael Moore as a documentary filmmaker, but the truth of it is, Michael Moore is not the big guy in Hollywood. Steven Spielberg is. And the most powerful way that Hollywood transmits its messages is not through documentary films, but through romantic comedies, thrillers, horror films, animated family films. You want to make an impact in Hollywood? You got to go make those kinds of movies too. So this is our post-Reagan agenda for a Trump era. It isn't just political, it isn't just policy-oriented, it also involves reaching young people, it involves reaching blacks and Latinos. Again, Trump has sort of opened a pathway here. The normal Republican strategy on race has been to defend America against the charge of bigotry, not realizing that this is itself a trap. What the Democrats have done essentially is take all the bad things that they did and blame them on America. And when we rush to the defense of America, we become the apologists for bigotry. The truth of it is a much better strategy. This is was my epiphany for Hillary's America, is don't defend America, blame them. And not to mention the fact that politically and as a movie maker, a good movie is not on the defense. Like, oh, America didn't really do genocide. We didn't really kill that many Indians. Slavery wasn't so bad, and many other countries had it too. Is that a better defense? Or is it better to say, oh, the Democrats are the party of slavery, of segregation, of Jim Crow, of the Ku Klux Klan, of lynching, of forced sterilization, of sympathy for fascism in the 1930s. You are the guys who interned the Japanese Americans during World War II. All these horrible things that you blame on America, you did. And yet, you have never admitted it. You've never acknowledged it. You've never taken responsibility for it. You've never apologized for it. And you've never paid 1 penny of restitution for it. This attack is unanswerable. And once our movie came out, the left has been thrashing around for 4 months, and they haven't been able to shake one fact in the movie or in the accompanying book. Let me close by saying that as conservatives, we are champions of entrepreneurship, creativity, the idea of making new things. We need to be more entrepreneurial about politics. We need to be more clever about the way in which we create institutions that can challenge the left on its own terms and in territory where it is strong. Because these guys are not done. They're not going away. Even Obama isn't going away. They are still in that state of Miltonic shock when the devils were flung from the firmaments of heaven and were dazed, scrambling. And so this recount is a reflection of that shock. We should encourage them, by the way. This recount is great. Number one, it gives us the thrill of seeing Hillary lose a second time. But they'll get over it. They'll get over it, and they'll get their act together, and they remain a terrifying force to oppose. They'll do everything they can. They know that Trump, they didn't expect Trump. They got him. They now realize he's pretty formidable. They will do everything they can to delegitimize him and destroy his presidency. Hopefully, they won't get much conservative help in doing that, because the truth of it is, this is our moment, this is our window. I think we should rise to the occasion. To close with those words from the 60s, if not us, who, if not now, when? Thank you very much. Thank you.